I don't know how to quantify it, 10x, 100x, feels very, very different pace, which is interesting for us. The difference just 1 year on in terms of the number of conversations, the topics about AI compliance, bias, the risks, it's just I don't know how to quantify it, 10x, 100x, feels very, very different. It was a very theoretical risk that, sure, because lawsuits happen all the time for discrimination in the workplace. It's only inevitable it's going to happen for AI too, but that is now a reality. Clearly, if you've got AI systems that are actively adapting as they are running with the true AI agents, one time or once a year, to audit of that system is nowhere near enough to actually mitigate the risk of something going wrong and to provide the assurance that it is continuing to operate in a safe and kind of compliant manner.
Morning, everyone. This is Bob Pulver from Elevate Your AIQ, part of the Work Defined podcast network. Really excited to be here at HR Tech in our little fishbowl studio here. And this morning, I have Mr. Jeff Cole from Warden AI. How you doing this morning, Jeff?
Hi, Bob. I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Nothing like a live recording to get first thing in the morning to get out of bed.
Yeah. Yesterday morning was a little easier to ease into things, but yeah, you and I have talked many times about everything going on in the responsible AI space around governance, assurance, observability, and all of these things that are important for us to move forward with these AI advancements in a constructive direction. And so I thought we'd kind of unpack some of the things that you're hearing, you're seeing, and some of the work that Warden AI is doing in the space. I know you have a report out recently around the state of bias in HR, and so I just thought we could unpack some of those things and get some updates from Warden.
So much going on, Holman, and it's even just so. This time last year, it was my first time coming to a US conference. At the time, we had maybe just a couple of clients. We're just a few months into our journey in the UK. And it was amazing to come here and discover the US market was actually quite good for us, and we came with some good clients. But the difference just 1 year on in terms of the number of conversations, the topics about AI compliance, bias, the risks, it's just I don't know how to quantify it, 10x, 100x, feels very, very different pace, which is really interesting and good for us.
Yeah, I've noticed. I was here 3 years ago, but not 2 years ago. And I just remember 2 years ago just giving sort of general advice as I was having FOMO from not being here. But you're going to see AI messaging everywhere, and people need to just start asking deeper, tougher questions of the vendors, a lot of which, it's not like you have everyone who's deep in the technology necessarily manning the booth, but you've got to prepare folks to answer those questions. And I feel like, 2 years on, there are more of those conversations happening for sure. And I also think that regardless of what's going on in the regulatory space around the world, there's a reputational risk that you incur if you don't prove yourself to be sort of a trustworthy, partner. So I imagine, employer brand and reputational risk comes up in your conversations, not just about what's going on in New York City or California or Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest changes, if you reflect over the last year, is yes, there's been a number of regulatory updates. Talk more about that. Obviously, we've got California. I've stuck one up on everyone that's coming out in 1st of October. Colorado as well. The EU Act continues to come closer to enactment. But what also happened that I'm not sure how many people predicted, it was certainly something that we were thinking would happen for the next couple of years, which was material lawsuits in the US about AI bias, specifically in the hiring context. So, I'm sure many people are familiar with the Workday lawsuit progressing in a way that most people didn't predict to the collective action status. And also, there there was one with, or is one now with SiriusXM as an employer that has an AI bias lawsuit against them as well. And those two developments happened within a month or two of each other. And so what I think was a very theoretical risk that, sure, lawsuits happen all the time for discrimination in the workplace. It's only inevitable it's going to happen for AI too, but that is now a reality, and that reality is, got all the risks that you mentioned about reputation and otherwise, and that brings a more of a substantive focus to these conversations and these risks and the importance of them.
So the focus for you guys in terms of target, markets, you've sort of expanded, the scope of who you're going after, who you're trying to help, right?
That's right, yeah. So Warden, for those who don't know, we audit and certify the AI systems are fair and compliant, specifically within HR technology. So we're very focused on this market. The sort of bread and butter of our core target market has been vendors. So vendors, building AI solutions, and particularly in recruitment, where there's a lot of high volume AI use and high risk around people's access to job or maybe internal mobility as well. But we're also now having more conversations and getting more interest beyond that core initial kind of target profile customer, where people are using AI in other aspects, performance management, for example, among others. And the other thing that's inevitable for us too is that, well, I think vendors are selling AI solutions bear a significant amount of risk and have a go-to-market challenge, right? Where they're selling this and employers are asking questions. And we're seeing now as well that the employers themselves are starting to realize that they have some risk of using and deploying these tools. And they're starting to come to us to get support with their deployment. So even if I know one of our customers who's a vendor is already working with us and has the assurance that we provide to the platform as a whole, that when they actually deploy that on their own use case, in their own environment, in their own candidates, or their own situation, it's technically a different system, and there's also different additional risks. And we're starting to grow that market as well, which is super exciting, really important.
Yeah, I do think that's important, because we think, you and I have talked about the importance of looking at data across the talent life cycle, right? And so obviously that stretches from when you're a candidate, from candidate data to employee data, everything in between. And I feel like there's some risks can surface everywhere. And then we think about like agentic and how data is just sort of flowing, in some cases, sort of autonomously, hopefully, with all the privacy and cybersecurity checks in place and some continuous monitoring there. But it does, as we start to integrate all of that, it just seems like there's an even stronger use case for, continuous monitoring throughout that. And so that pervades a specific vendor. And if you're an employer, right, I've got an entire tech stack that's now AI infused, powered, native, pick your terminology du jour. The fact is there's still, some embedded risks there, and you need to know and have sort of an MRI done across that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when we started out, our approach has always be continuous auditing and monitoring as a third party, and a little bit ahead of the need, perhaps initially, where maybe like an annual audit is considered enough by some regulation. But our view is always that in the AI and technology changes so fast that you do need a recurring kind of oversight into it, because these things change so much. And I think that's the market's starting to realize that, and the more advanced AI is getting, and the more agentic's still its infancy, but clearly if you've got AI systems that are actively adapting as they are running, like true AI agents, for one time or once a year, like to audit of that system is nowhere near enough to actually mitigate the risk of something going wrong, and to provide the assurance that it is continuing to operate in a safe and kind of compliant manner. So I think quite happy that we've taken that sort of tech-led continuous approach, and we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
As we build out our product further.
Yeah. What's going on with your relocation? Anything you can share there? Or?
Yeah. So we've got yeah, so when we first, like say, reflecting back on 1 year ago when we first came here, I was actually getting married in the US and just thought, oh, this HR Tech conference sounds pretty cool. I'll just pop over, and check it out. But before that, assumed, being in regulation technology would be pretty happy just serving the European market for a long time. How wrong can you be? And so fast forward a year, we've now got an office in Austin, Texas, small office. I'm personally relocating next month to focus and with the business further over here. And so we're a transatlantic company now.
Excellent. Love to hear it. The California legislation, can you just give us the highlights of that? I mean, that is, like you said, around the corner, October 1st, it goes into effect, right?
Yeah. So a really interesting one. It's it's not a new, unlike a lot of the other AI regulations, it's not a new regulation per se. It's not a whole new bill. It's not like the New York local law, the EU AI Act. It's an amendment to an existing bill, the Fairness in Employment and Housing Act, which has, of course, been around for a long time and applied to pre-AI systems, to people-powered processes. And the amendments basically expand the scope to cover automated decision systems, which include and actually go beyond just pure AI systems, but other forms of kind of automated kind of machine-based system, and apply the same core principles of anti-discrimination across AI-powered systems, essentially. What I think is, a number of interesting things about this one. Partly the sheer lack of implementation time given, since yes, it was a 3-month window from when it was signed or enacted to going into effect in October. So even now, I'm speaking to people like AI vendors in California who are just like, oh, what's this all about? Like, they're like, honestly, the lack of awareness is concerning. And I feel bad for people because there has been so little notice and almost awareness. I think for some reason it's kind of slipped under the radar. But given it's California and it's about technology, it arguably could be closer to a federal regulation in terms of the number of tech companies in California or people doing business in California is so large, for obvious reasons, that it's going to be, I think, a very, very significant regulation that I think a lot of people in the space will need to follow. And I think we'll see, as with all regulations, like a few people get compliant like in time for it, and we're under a lot of pressure at the moment to deliver on that deadline to a lot of customers that have come on board recently. But I still think the mainstream would come over the next year or two because to catch up.
So what's the penalty for?
Good question. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the penalty for non-compliance. I can share some of the requirements. That's useful.
Yeah.
So we're big, quite complicated regulation, and as ever with these regulations, are not often super prescriptive over exactly what to do.
Yeah.
But some of the key kind of takeaways on our side for HR technology is in the requirement to, firstly, that explicitly, an automated decision system can discriminate based on up to 18 protected characteristics. Some of them are kind of like nested versions of each other. So sometimes the list is 14 or 15, but if you fully list all out, it's actually 18 different ones. So a really long list, much longer than just sex and race, for example, which is the kind of standard in like New York's local law. So super comprehensive on that front. In terms of measures around actually testing systems for bias, there's no explicit like mandatory requirement, but it's strongly incentivized or implied that having bias, they call it anti-bias testing or auditing, is incentivized. In particular, if there is a claim, if there is an incident, then the kind of quality, if we could say, scope of bias testing done will be used as to determine liability. So they're going to go for explicitly going to look for evidence of that, which leads a lot of people to read that as, okay, we need to have proper bias testing in place, potentially from a third party, and so that's been quite good for our business in terms of paying attention to what we do and helping to comply with those regulations.
Right. So in a way, it's an insurance policy, right? To say, look, we're taking these measures. If somebody brings a case forward or a claim forward, at least we can show that we've been doing everything within reason to, sort of mitigate risks, and, no system is perfect kind of thing, but at least you're not sort of negligent.
Exactly. At least that's our interpretation of it. Obviously not lawyers, not legal advice.
Yeah.
But it's not explicitly you must do X, Y, Z advice testing, otherwise you're not compliant, and that's it. You could not actually do that and still be technically compliant, but if it comes to some sort of claim and you don't have much evidence to stand by, then based on the law, it would be you might not be in a great position to defend that essentially.
Yeah. The just in terms of the short runway they gave people, I remember, wasn't there a part of the EU AI Act that was where there was a date, like it was about like AI literacy for talent people or something like that? There was a really short runway for that too. It's like, wait a minute, I don't have any discrete plans to do like a specific L&D, program or a compliance type of, responsible AI literacy thing. Like I didn't have that in the work. That seemed like they had a pretty short turnaround to be compliant with that piece of the EU AI Act.
That's right. Yeah, I can't remember the exact window. I still think it was maybe 6 months. I have to guess from when they first. But I think, yeah. But overall, if you compare the EU Act to this one, I mean, obviously, the EU Act is a lot more expansive.
Yeah.
In its approach, but it's a year and a half, 2 years from finally signed to the main. Yeah, there's a few stages before that, but the main enactment is in August, or in effect in August of 2026 for high risk systems needing to comply with the obligations there. That's a lot longer than 3 months, right? And that's maybe reflects a difference in approach and between certain regulators. I don't know. Maybe California regulators quite aggressive about getting things done fast, and Europeans tend to take a bit longer over things.
Yeah, I don't know who comes up with all these, portions of this and that. I think that's confusing for people that are trying to, do the right thing. But I guess, most organizations seem to be taking a wait and see kind of approach to a lot of this anyway, unfortunately.
Yeah, you get a mix.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about was the Human-Centric AI Council, of which I'm a proud member. This is led by Kyle Lagunas from Kyle & Co. And Warden is one of the underwriters of the work that the council is doing. So I thought we could just sort of talk about what the council is doing, and maybe just start with like the impetus for you to be involved here.
Yeah, so for us, we're proud underwriters of the great work that Kyle and yourself and the team are doing there. So super close to our approach, our thesis of responsible AI and these topics. So yeah, it was no brainer. As soon as Kyle mentioned it, I saw it. It's like we're a relatively small startup growing fast, but we're definitely going to put some of our call it marketing budget towards this, just to make sure we're backing it. So it's been really good. Met a lot of great people. The members of the council themselves, some really great people some of whom we've actually gone on are working with and kind of partnering with as well. Awesome. But yeah, also keen to hear from you what the latest update is there. I've not seen output, I don't think.
The council has been busy. Kyle has been very busy. He's brought on some new folks in supporting roles to make sure we're moving forward and making sure we get some some of the deliverables out. Get a social content calendar out, so each of the 5 pillars and their intersecting work streams. So this cuts across AI literacy and education. It's what we call trust and safety, which is your bailiwick, and then we've got value realization and how you are asking vendors these better questions that I alluded to before, and then we've got adoption and change. How are organizations actually embracing everything that they need to do to go through this transformation, or however you want to describe this dynamic change that's coming with AI, and then the future forward work pillar, which Kyle and I are working on together, which is how do we take all of those aspects and more around future of work and sort of forecast where some of these things are going in terms of AI governance and assurance, in terms of literacy and readiness programs, So we're trying to put out some frameworks and some practical guidance to organizations who are still trying to figure out what their strategy is, and hopefully that strategy includes all of those elements around responsible AI and responsible AI literacy and readiness. So
it's great. It's say from the first workshop I went to by the council, I was impressed with the sheer breadth of the scope.
Yeah.
Just everything you're covering there is huge, like all meaty topics in their own right. So we're impressive that the group's managing to cover so many different important topics.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of smart people involved from all different industries, a lot of talent leaders, a lot of transformation leaders, some independent folks, but clearly a lot of bright people coming together. So, looking forward to starting to put out some content, hopefully do some, like a white paper or some, a piece of market research around that future forward piece. So looking forward to that. So awesome. Well, Jeff, thank you for stopping by the booth here. Hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Good luck with your big move to Austin, and we'll see you around the show.
Great. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure as always, Bob. Cheers.
Likewise.